Welcome to the Abyssinian Syllabary, where we spell out Ethiopia in 33 characters. I'm Yves-Marie Stranger, your host and the compiler of these Abyssinian lives. Nota bene, while any resemblance to actual countries, past or present, and to historical figures is not purely coincidental, this is a work of fiction. For a primer on these Ethiopian characters, newcomers may start with the prologue by Manuel de Guèz. To order the book or a poster of the Abyssinian Syllabary, visit uthiopia.com. That's uthiopia.com.
Raw meat, pepper, and flasks of mead, that's what we need, enthused Yacob to his disciple Berde Mariam. We are in Lent, master, the latter remonstrated. Splendid, exclaimed Yacob. The disapproval of all and sundry shall render our feast all the more delectable. The Apocrypha of Yacob. Gregorios. Not a half league from the deep of the Blue Nile, and some 3 leagues from Myrtule Mariam, the stone palace the Portuguese masons fashioned for Queen Eleni, is found the sole lake of Gojam, that antediluvian land that nests inside the equatorial loop of this river Nile. It is here, in the lakeside church of Bahar Giorgis, Sea of George, that Gregorios was born to a farming priest of the name Mogus and to his wife Asqual, Egg-yolk. Gregorios learnt to plough and to crack the whip on the right ox and on the left, while still below his father's knee. Although raw-boned and dry as an acacia offshoot, Gregorios was sturdy, and he carried his father his injera at noon, and bore for him the host at Sunday Mass. The church, perched on an outcrop above the Sea of George, was a lean-to open to the 4 winds, which blew with ardour from the Nile gorge, first at dawn and again at sunset. Nevertheless, the rustics of the lake's environs sought cheer here every Sunday. The child Gregorios knew his plain songs and all of the events and dates of the Orthodox calendar, which was no mean feat. He also knew from just 7 on how to foresee on which day and of which month would take place any feast for years to come, and what this would bode in terms of ill luck and omens. Gregorios's father was a debtera, which means, in the language of these parts, that he was a diviner and a maker of computes, and he shared with his able son the different computations as well as the divinations of the canons. There dwelt inside this fertile Nile loop a handful of bloodlines that begat children of flaxen hair and with eyes, in some conspicuous cases, that turned out to be blue or at times green. These people named themselves Burtukan, or Orangers, by which they meant that they were Portuguese and Catholic, apostolic. They had scant knowledge, if any at all, of the tongue they claimed as their own, this Portuguese. The distance they would maintain with their neighbours was of the breadth of a hair, or a blue reflection in an otherwise brownish eye. Be that as it may, this singularity, which these Burtukan prized, was enough in itself to distinguish them. Gregorios's family, if not pertaining of the same rootstock, did live alongside them. When the time came to choose a vocation for the child, he was assigned to Myrtule Mariam, a church that remained in the bailiwick of this Burtukan clergy. Later on, Gregorios proceeded to Tigray and to Maigwagwa, where there still resided 2 apostolic fathers ordained by the patriarch of all Ethiopias, Alfonso Mendez. The Burtukan only remained in this Maigwagwa after their banishment from the rest of Ethiopia by fiat of the Emperor Basil. Gregorios ploughed the rock slides they call fields, and was of assistance at Mass, just as he had done as a child for his father, so that he spent here 15 very contented years. At this time, he was to later declare it must have been Tuesday the 30th of the month of Gunbot of 1659 in the Julian calendar, as it was the day before the feast of St. Yared. Gregorios travelled, causes unknown, first to Jerusalem, where he was ordained a priest and began to bear the mousseline turban of the Abyssinian sacerdotes, and onwards to Rome. In the Vatican, Gregorios entered the monastery Santo Stefano degli Abyssini, Saint Stephen of the Abyssinians. He was more than 60 years of age, and his hair had long turned ashen. The years of hard labour and the long journeys on foot in fear of outlaws and wild animal alike had made the Ethiopian monk frail. Yet it is here and at this mature age that Gregorios begins to write the last and most important chapter of his life. One morning, after the first liturgy of the hours, a heavy-set Frank, hairy and pink, presents himself at the monastery gate. He is a learned German. This Geronimo Ludolf declares to be a speaker of Ethiopic. There is much chortling, but lo and behold, the Frank is prompt in his repartee. His pronunciation may be curious. Amharic, coughed up by a phlegm-ridden river horse, was how Gregorios was to later describe Ludolf's style. The Ethiopian would go on to say that Ludolf spoke such as not one father of the society had ever been able to, even after spending many a year in Abyssinia. The German lexicographer is soliciting a collaborator, and he has found one. Gregorios and Ludolf will exert themselves together on the production of an encyclopedic work, a doorstopper in which one discovers page after page the detailed genealogies of kings, the descriptions of religious custom, and zoological and botanical charts. It is the first informed book on the lands and peoples still under the aegis not 15 years back of the Prester John of the Indies, a realm in which unicorns were said to migrate throughout the Agomeder of Gojam, according to the accounts of Father Lobo, a Jesuit who settled in these same lands for 25 years. Gregorios, never short of jocularity, expounds with seriousness to his friend Ludolf on the subject of the fat-tailed sheep, a well-known breed of Abyssinia, and this is how the first scientific book on Ethiopia appears with an illustration of an ovine hitched up to a cart which supports its own caudal appendage. Is Gregorios looking back to his father's flock that he tended in his early years? Be that as it may, Gregorios will continue his close partnership with his friend over 11 long years. Together they will even visit Prussia, a land where Gregorios complains bitterly of the cold and of the gait of horses. He does not understand why these Germans do not train their mounts to amble, as we so readily do in Ethiopia. Blood is thicker than water, however apostolic, and an Ethiopian monk, even a Catholic one, even one with the pretense of laying down history, cannot scrub the dirt of his motherland from underneath his fingernails, thinks Ludolf, laughing to himself. You can take an Ethiopian out of Ethiopia, but not Ethiopia out of an Ethiopian, exclaims the German lexicographer. Gregorios speaks of his upcoming return to Ethiopia. What would I give for just 1 gorsha of injera and a horn or 2 of mead, he sighs, the day before his passing, in his sleep in a Göttingen inn. Gregorios had dined that same evening on baked lamb served with buttered turnips, a dish of which he had partaken 3 times. Between the pear and the cheese, the Abyssinian had chosen the latter, a creamy Edelpildkäse, and, munching contentedly, he had mused that it would be the sole thing to be found lacking back in his homeland. For, as for cheeses, all they had in Ethiopia were some smoked curds of the name Ibe. Gregorios had capped this hearty meal with a thimble of Kirchenwasser.